Thompson Productions.
It was a layered operation that achieved many objectives, but it facilitated the growth of the state as well. And it facilitated that path of the dystopian nightmare, and the violation of our inherent rights. So that was an inherent example of the federal government's abuse of power.
Oh, Father, tell me, do we get what we deserve? Oh, we get what we deserve.
Holy cow. About a third of the building has been blown away.
And way down we go. Oh, way down we go. Say way down we go. And way down we go. Oh, 'cause they will run you down to the dark. Yes, then they will run you down till you fall. Oh, and they will run you down till you go. Yeah, till you can't crawl no more.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another No Way Jose podcast. Today, we're continuing on with our ongoing series of Wendy Painting's new research she dropped in the form of a series of Twitter threads. So we're taking this over to the podcast sphere and covering it over here. That way, we can kind of amplify its message and also just kind of process it for ourselves, because I do try to in this show stay on the on the cutting edge of what's going on in the Oklahoma City bombing. That's, I guess, kind of one of those things I've become known for with this. While I would never say I'm an expert or anything of the sort, but I've cut my teeth quite well in this story and gotten pretty knowledgeable. And this is something I like to talk about a lot. So I do try to spread this knowledge about and be abreast of the latest. So that's why we're here. Before we continue on with part 4, Wendy did make an accompanying thread, as I've been mentioning, that kind of gave her kind of introductory caveats, and then also kind of an ongoing companion thread to give updates as we go. So I figured we would take a moment and go and rehash the last episode, and probably do that every episode. That way we can kind of, because this is stuff I think it's going to eventually going to kind of coalesce, so it's good to kind of then rehash real quickly. So let's go through that. Let's recap last episode, which was 3B, and we will actually just go into why there even was a 3A and a 3B in a second. So that one was looking for an army. It focused on McVeigh's activities in and around Kingman, Arizona in 1993, as well as contacts he forged in an attempt to forge with other well-known and not so well-known white power movement actors at that time. Notably, McVeigh's initial dealings with and/or his proximity to individuals associated with the National Alliance were discussed, as was the relationship of those individuals with Jack Oliphant and Aryan nations. Once again, certain links between PATCON and this network were noted, as was the role of PATCON handler Don Jarrett in the FBI's subsequent OKC or Oklahoma City bombing investigation of specific individuals in this network. Finally, this thread discussed the use of alternate methods of communication by McVeigh beyond the famed Darrell Bridges calling card. Apologies for the numerous stupid typos I found this thread after I'd already posted it. I never intended to suggest that McVeigh, quote-unquote, made contact with himself at a Phoenix gun show. He might have, but that's not what I was trying to say. Apologies also for the wonky numbering. Initially 3A and B were one thread, but it ended up being so long that I broke it up into two sections, and even then 3B was entirely too long for this forum. And then obviously she provides the link. Anyone who wants this master thread, let me know, because this is kind of the best one to pass around, because then from there you can find the other ones. But let's go ahead and get into, we're starting part 4. Let's go and get this one. Is called The Mail Room, M-A-L-E. I think this is going to strongly indicates where we're going in this episode. I knew there was some salacious stuff. I didn't pre-read this one, just so you guys know. I know I said I had the other ones. I meant to. For some reason, I thought I had read this far, but I hadn't. So we're kind of going into it raw today, essentially. Be a little bit more of a reaction on my part. But I do have a little bit of an inkling of the kind of the content we're getting into. This is where it gets a little bit a little salacious, so this should be fun, interesting stuff. I don't know. This is where, I don't know, real world parapolitical events kind of get into the humorous / I don't know, truth being stranger than fiction type thing. So looking forward to going into that. Let's go ahead and get into it. I will let you guys know, actually, I did breeze through it beforehand. It does look a little bit longer, so I probably will on this thread defer a little bit towards not going as much into the supportive, documents or whatever associated with each individual thing. I mean, obviously, I'll still skim them over, make sure, kind of get an idea if there's something we should go through. But there's a lot of content for us to go through for this one, for sure. So, and a lot of times I do think those the accompanying things aren't always a necessity to read. A lot of times they're just kind of her kind of showing her work, kind of like, hey, here's where this said this, here's where that said this. And it's good to be aware of it, but for the purpose of this presentation, it may not be necessary. If you want to go and look into yourself, that way you have the individual source or, verify her sources or whatever, you can. But, when I feel like it's necessary, we'll go into it. But that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and get into it. This one will probably be a little bit longer one, so just go ahead and buckle up. But I think this is really going to pay off, and I'm looking forward to where these future threads go. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, she posts for the first one, the part 4, the mailroom, Arizona, spring, summer 94, shows this picture of this truck that says U.S. Mail, M-A-L-E. It says, when we last left off in September 93, McVeigh had quit his job and left Kingman, Arizona, attended a gun show in Phoenix, and then the Soldier of Fortune convention in Las Vegas, where he met up with Roger Moore. In October, he and Terry Nichols traveled to eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas, where, on October 12th, McVeigh received a traffic citation. While both Nichols and McVeigh would offer conflicting reasons for this trip, it is commonly cited as the point where a conspiracy involving Elohim City began. Here's the form of the ticket. Kind of my point exactly what I was driving for. Not really too necessary for me to read through the individual, but you guys are aware. This is the ticket. This is the famed ticket. This is a traffic citation frequently brought up by us. A lot of us, OKC bombing enjoyers, or research enjoyers. This is one that frequently comes up. This is it. So let's keep going. On October 16th, McVeigh let an AT&T calling card expire, which he'd used since late 1991. The following month, Terry Nichols purchased the Darrell Bridges calling card, which prosecutors later put forth as the end-all, be-all key to the Oklahoma City bombing conspiracy. McVeigh's father said his son showed up unexpectedly on October 18th with $4,000 in cash, which he gave to his father as repayment on the loan. During her conversation with Robert Millar, patriarch of Elohim City, Millar told Sherry Seymour that McVeigh had visited Elohim City, that he'd personally seen him there, and suggested she speak with Dennis Mahon. While applying for clearance for a security job later, Seymour learned Millar himself had reported her Elohim City visit to the FBI, which, for those who aren't aware, the ins and outs, it is pretty well known that Millar was almost certainly informed. I think he straight up said he was at points, but just kind of a well-known thing. It was a kind of a borderline open secret, I guess, depending on who you're asking. Seymour did speak with Dennis Mahon, as Millar suggested. Mahon admitted that Timmy had been to Elohim City and had left behind some damning evidence, which Mahon said he flushed down the toilet. And then he also said this, and then she shared a previous thing where Mahon said he was sure that Tim met with Oliphant many times and that he, Mahon, had corresponded with Oliphant by mail. Mahon would say something similar to reporters a year later, so we're bringing up the connections to Oliphant, this other character who glows like the sun. So let's keep going. By November, McVeigh and Nichols were in Michigan, where McVeigh stayed, first with the Nichols brothers and then with a Nichols family friend. Nichols was packing up to move his family out west to St. George, Utah. McVeigh said Nichols got to St. George in early December, but thought it was too sprawling, so he moved his family to Las Vegas, where his son and ex-wife lived. Here's a photo, one of the booking photos of Terry Nichols. McVeigh and Nichols' decision to move to St. George had nothing to do with Johnny Bangerter, whom he, McVeigh, had not yet met. A motel owner in southern Utah said the FBI showed great interest in a man who had stayed there in early January 1995, who was not McVeigh. Toward the end of December 1993, as McVeigh prepared to leave Michigan, he wrote his sister, telling her he was on the move again and discussed bank robberies and unnamed friends who he said were, quote-unquote, 100% reliable. Okay, all right, sugar some minutes there. Okay, so we're showing interest in the FBI and someone who stayed at certain... Okay, all right, let's keep going. McVeigh was on the move. He left Michigan in mid-January 1994, saying he was heading to Arizona. However, on the way, quote-unquote, he visited Roger Moore's mistress at Moore's Ranch in Arkansas, afterward making his second known trip to Waco, Texas. That's particularly interesting. This was the exact time when Moore, from the Florida residence he shared with his wife's sister, suddenly began making a series of calls to his arms dealer in Utah who'd sold the Davidians weapons. To his arms dealer... Oh, okay. Oh, shit. All right. Okay. And to his friends of his in Prescott and Oracle, Arizona, one of whom later lit his neighborhood ablaze and nearly blew himself up. And then she provides a link to this where we talked about this in an earlier thread. Or maybe this was a previous thing. Actually, this is a previous tweet of hers. So actually, let's look at this real quick because this wasn't from a thread. So this is a blast destroys home, injures man. This is a home in the West. This is an old clip. It says a home in Williamson Valley has been destroyed by what investigators say was an exploding stockpile of ammunition and gunpowder. Witness told investigators that James Hack, 49, was reloading ammunition in his garage Tuesday afternoon when something went wrong. Yavapai County Sheriff's Lieutenant Andy Bacon said. William Molina, 29, told police he was walking into his house and saw a bright flash followed by an explosion. Hack tried to use an extinguisher and garden hose to douse the flames, which continued to set off additional explosions throughout the garage. The fire quickly spread to the house and nearby vehicles, destroying everything in its path, Bacon had said. And she just mentions they had interesting friends. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I guess this isn't showing that they were friends, but this obviously, the implication here, this is one of his friends. So these are, I guess, the claim here. I mean, she's not providing a sort, but I mean, I don't know. It'd be a weird thing to lie about. I'm not saying she's lying in any way. I'm just saying this doesn't. So she's saying this is the threat, the newspaper clipping showing them. Obviously, that doesn't establish the connection to Moore, but to some extent, take her word for it, or you can ask her or whatever. Moore was still taking these calls to Utah and Arizona when, after leaving Waco, McVeigh stopped briefly in Flagstaff, Arizona, arriving there no later than February 4th. Moore's last call to his Utah and Arizona friends was on February 7th. McVeigh didn't arrive in Kingman until the 10th. Okay. To me, this suggests the possibility that Moore may have been paving the way for McVeigh and facilitating his contact with certain people. Okay. Interesting idea. McVeigh was back in Kingman by February 10th, 1994, where on February 11th, Drifters, Lands, and Jacks opened a P.O. box that PATCON handler Don Jarrett would sniff out later after the Oklahoma City bombing. Okay. On February 15th, McVeigh signed a lease for a small house in Golden Valley, Arizona, just a stone's throw from Richard Isaacson, point man for the local National Alliance, Arizona Patriot, and longtime friend of Jack Oliphant. All right. Isaacson, who closed his P.O. box and left a forwarding address in Phoenix in September 93, around the same time McVeigh left Kingman and set back out on the road, had since returned or would shortly. McVeigh's Golden Valley neighbors described him as polite and helpful and remembered that he always wore camo. For some reason, a month after the Oklahoma City bombing, PATCON handler Don Jarrett interviewed the man who had rented the house to McVeigh. On February 22nd, a P.O. Box 121 was rented under the name David Webb at the mailroom in Kingman, Arizona. Okay, so you can see this is this is it right here. Nothing really particularly worth that I can think of that worth mentioning specific for those listening. Just clearly a receipt. When the ATF searched the Bullhead City, Arizona storage space rented by alien implants guy Stephen Colbert that July, they found documents pertaining to the rental and use of that box and another one at the mailroom under the name Zoe. Which, by the way, I don't know if I ever did an aside and mentioned the alien implant thing. I mean, obviously, I don't have like a photographic recall of the specifics of Steve, but she has made kind of like funny little digs at Stephen Colbert with that a few times. And I'm not going to assume you guys all know that because it is pretty deep, even for those Oklahoma City bombing that know that lore. Colbert, and this is something you would know if you had read Aberration, but I mean, you probably could easily have forgotten it. But yeah, he's also kind of made a name for himself in the UFO community, and particularly for being the guy with like, oh, the implants out into the skin and this and that. So it's just kind of one of those examples how things sometimes tend to glow. I don't know. That's kind of probably the most subtle way I could put it, I guess. So, but anyways, yeah. So just throwing that out there so you guys are aware why she keeps bringing that up. It is worthwhile mentioning this guy is kind of this like a phenom youth chemist character, also weirdly in, kind of in the UFO community, which is notorious for grilloing and disinfo. And then keep in mind, he's kind of, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know. It's hard to say who these people are, what they're about. You can only kind of, but yeah, it is. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out this guy is sketchy. So let's keep going. Both Jack Oliphant and McVeigh rented a box at the mailroom in Kingman at this time as well. The manager there later made some curious statements. Let me see right here. We'll hone in on the statement here. She also said she recognized the sketch of a second bombing suspect dubbed John Doe 2 as a man who picked up McVeigh's mail in March. Oh, all right. Oh, it's coming full circle now. Willoughby added that she does not recall whether the man had a tattoo on his arm, as had been described by law enforcement bulletins. But she did see a man who did seem to describe that look that picked up his mail. All right. So this is in Arizona. Okay, so this is in Arizona. This is where we're locating. So someone's saying they're seeing John Doe 2 back during his Arizona days, picking up his mail. That's something. A woman named Dwayne walked into the temporary FBI headquarters in Kingman on May 3rd, 1995. She reported that about temporary FBI headquarters in Kingman. Okay, I was just thinking that through. I was like, wait, are we implying there's some sort of headquarters of FBI in Kingman? I'm thinking that means like maybe that was just kind of I'm assuming that means like maybe that was just kind of the team or whoever the people heading up the investigation there maybe had a temporary thing set up. So I digress. She reported that about 2 weeks after the Oklahoma City bombing, or before the Oklahoma City bombing, Jack Oliphant told her and her husband, Richard, to keep watching the news because something big is going to break that will make the O.J. Simpson trial seem like nothing, and this will not be the end of it. Dwayne expressed her great fear the Oliphants would find out she had spoken with the FBI, stating she thought Jack would retaliate if he knew, but felt she needed to report her belief that Jack had foreknowledge of the Oklahoma City bombing. All right. Follow-up interview with her was conducted on May 10th by PATCON handler Don Jarrett. Dwayne said she and Richard lived with Jack and his wife Margot from late 93 to spring 94. During that time, Jack received many visitors at the ranch whom she did not know. On those occasions, she was instructed to go to her trailer so that Jack could talk to them privately. When Dwayne was shown pictures of various Oklahoma City bombing suspects and people of interest, she said she thought she saw McVeigh on the property, but couldn't be certain because she often saw people dressed in camouflage fatigues at the ranch. PATCON handler Don Jarrett asked her why she was so afraid of Jack or what made her think he'd retaliate. It is not noted in this report. However, he conducted a follow-up interview with Jack himself the same day, May 10th. But they mainly talked about John Doe 2. PATCON handler Don Jarrett also interviewed with Dwayne's husband on May 15th, who, for the most part, relayed the same info that she had, but added the backstory of how he came to know Jack and said that on more than one occasion, Jack told them the FBI frequently flew over his property. As strange as it may sound, and perhaps unrelated to the purpose of this discussion, this sounded oddly similar to something I was told by someone who used to visit Jack's ranch in the early 1990s. Now, I'm going to go out and lark here, and I think this one's probably worth reading. So let's go ahead and go through this one. It's conversations between Wendy Painting and Redacted. It says 2016 to 2023. The first time we met Jack, that very first night, he told us that the FBI regularly flew over his property with helicopters, so close that it would shake the cabin. Not long after, in that very same night, a fucking helicopter appeared. I couldn't believe it. This was at night, middle of nowhere. We were sitting in Jack's cabin on top of the mountain, and it was dead quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Suddenly, we heard a sound outside. We all grabbed our guns and ran outside, and there it was, a helicopter with no lights on. No lights. It buzzed Jack's shed that he lived up on top of the mountain. Not 500 feet above the cabin. Not 200 feet or 100 feet. Like 25 feet above the cabin. It was so close they could have thrown down a ladder, to me. So close we thought it might crash into us. It almost seemed staged somehow, almost planned, like Jack knew this was going to happen. Almost as if he was talking to somebody and said, "Okay guys, come and do the helicopter thing because I just told them about the helicopter." But it happened more than once. The helicopter would appear so close that it could have landed on his roof. Jack would have would have us chase the fucking helicopter around. I thought we were going to get shot. We would grab our guns, run up to the top of the mountain, and the helicopter would buzz around up there and then leave. At the time, we thought he must be really under siege. It was really weird. A weird place. That is weird. And then she says, "Make of that what you will," which is exactly kind of what I don't know what to make of that. That's something. From mid-February till late 1994, side note, McVeigh worked at True Value Hardware store in Kingman, where Fortier also worked in the accounting office. One coworker told the FBI that while Fortier was pleasant enough, he'd expressed his desire to get in contact with a local quote-unquote free man, and then there's a article showing this. A lot of time on their hands. People obviously have a lot of time on their hands, said DPS officer who works undercover and who spent several months monitoring the activities of various freemen. Most law enforcement agencies have dealt with freemen, say they have been docile and have not offered any resistance when arrested. But DPS officers recently have been warned to take precautions when they discovered unlicensed vehicles driven by freemen. Okay, so it's just a kind of example of this concept, freeman. While he did not mention the name of the freeman, it is worth noting that both Isaacson and Paulson claimed to be original members of the Arizona Freemen. Okay, so it's like this certain term throws around. We've seen here in the Arizona Republic, freemen vigilantes, quote unquote. So okay. We'll keep going here. McVeigh became acquainted with a co-worker named Tony, a guy with prison gang-affiliated tattoos on his face and a long rap sheet who also lived in Golden Valley. Both Tony and his wife claim McVeigh visited them weekly and they'd get high on meth and weed. Interestingly, Tony's older brother, a known drug dealer in the Kingman area who also had a lengthy rap sheet, was one of the people mentioned by his former boss as someone involved with the Arizona Patriots. Fortier and McVeigh befriended another coworker, Chris, a UFO enthusiast attempting to make a laser gun from a battery and a crystal. They talked about FEMA, and their weird coworker told them about a secret military base in Kingman guarded by UN soldiers who wore black uniforms with no insignias on them. This doubled as a UFO base that had a massive hologram that UFOs could see from space. I was told something similar twice, several years apart, by the owner of a motel in Kingman where McVeigh had stayed, who was the first person I ever spoke with in Kingman, and who included some details about what she said were nearby underground MyLabs, which is military mind control and alien abduction. I think is what they're. I forget what the MyLabs are, to be honest with you. Military alien something to do with alien abductions. I forget. When the FBI later asked Fortier to review some photos seized as evidence from his house, Fortier explained, and here we go. Here we have looks like some sort of 302 or something of the like. So it says Fortier indicated that he took these photographs approximately 1 year ago in the hills northbound of Bank Street, Kingman, Arizona. He stated that he believed it was a secret compound with an airstrip and believed it was used by drug smugglers. Timothy McVeigh was not with them when he took the photographs. Fortier did not believe this compound was operated by the UN. Okay, well, that's something for sure. All right. Around this time, McVeigh told his father about his and Fortier's recent visits to a secret government test site somewhere in the desert, saying that during one visit they'd been chased off by a helicopter which threatened to shoot them if they didn't leave, and about another visit in which an unknown person shot at him and Fortier, but they both returned fire, unloading their weapons at the mysterious assailants. Later, this happened, and she shows an excerpt here. It says, the following investigation was conducted by Special Agent John A. Wilson, Jr. at Las Vegas, Nevada on June 1st, 1995, and concerns the possible arrest of subject Terry McVeigh, okay, and Michael Fortier at a Nevada nuclear test facility. Okay, obviously giving fake names. Okay. Wayne Adams, Department of Energy, Las Vegas, Nevada, was telephonically contacted and was tasked with searching DOE security, Nye County and Clark County, Nevada law enforcement incident reports for any prior incidents involving McVeigh and Fortier. Adams advised if McVeigh and/or Fortier were operated by DOE security, Nye County or Clark County law enforcement, and a record of their detention was made, he would have access to the report. The facilities included in this query were the Nevada test site, Tonopah Test Range, and Nellis Air Force Base. Adams advised that there are no records or reports on file with any of these entities concerning McVeigh or Fortier for the years 94 and 95. Adams also gave the numerous aliases for the two subjects, which were also negative. Oh crap, give me a second. It kicked me back a bunch, even though I know I should be doing the PDF thing. Here I am. Give me a second. Okay. Here we are. All right. Anyways, when a multitude of FBI agents swooped in to interview everybody and their mother in Kingman, several people named Chris as a likely co-conspirator candidate because he knew a lot about explosives and possessed quite a stockpile of them, often bragging about how he could blow up an entire city block. Chris was also named as someone who sometimes went out shooting in the desert with Fortier and McVeigh, the latter two often making jaunts to a property very near Oliphant's remote mountain ranch, where they would target, shoot, set off practical explosives, and sometimes camp. Interestingly, in regards to earlier helicopter over Jack Mountain in 95, McVeigh told his defense team about an incident that occurred while he and Fortier were setting off explosives very near Oliphant's property, so close, in fact, McVeigh could see a sign that said Oliphant posted on the path leading into Jack's ranch. Okay, we're getting these guys closer and closer. While there, a police helicopter flew over them. McVeigh said he pointed his gun at the aircraft and thought he and Fortier might have been identified by it. You'll have to trust me this or just take it for what it's worth, but having been at Jack's Mountain, I can tell you with certainty that it is doubtful anybody would just randomly be close enough to read the entrance sign. It is a place you go very specifically and tread very carefully. Also, not a place you want to attempt to approach in an economy-size rental car. It's her showing photos of her being there and kind of having scoped out the area, so you'll have to take, as she said, her word and geography that just would not make sense. That I know, just like why the hell is McVeigh here, other than to, let's be real, probably meet up with Jack Oliphant. Either way, this was not the only account of McVeigh and friends being surveilled by a government vehicle while playing in the desert near Oliphant's property. Fortier's neighbor described an incident when all three were followed into the remote area by a green van occupied by three men watching them with binoculars. In response, they split up, all going in different directions as they drove back into Kingman later that day. Nobody said a word, but it happened awkward. The same man said that during the pre-interview for his scheduled appearance during the grand jury in the Oklahoma City bombing case, the Department of Justice prosecutor told him they had surveillance photos and tapes on everyone, him, McVeigh, and Fortier going back nearly 2 years, which he took to mean that McVeigh had been the target of the watchers. Of course, this could have been a bluster on the part of the prosecutor, but maybe it wasn't. James Nichols was sure McVeigh had been under surveillance since his first trip to Waco in March 93. And as we saw in part 2, McVeigh had already been investigated and approached by law enforcement for selling the flare launchers Moore designed. Later, while denying he knew Oliphant, McVeigh would characteristically tell a shifting story about one incident near his property. Early on, in May 95, McVeigh said he and Fortier had gotten their vehicle stuck near there and were pulled out by some nearby ranchers who may, he said, be able to place him near the Oliphant Ranch. In June 95, he told them the same story, except this time, a male and a Native American woman came along and used a chain to help them out from the flooded area they were stuck in. During the fiasco, a man stood across from the flooded area, watching them and cursing because their vehicle was blocking his way. He thought perhaps the man could be Oliphant. As he did about the lands and Jack's coincidences, McVeigh bemoaned the complications of his chance encounter. Here is a excerpt supporting this. He said that there may be lots of coincidences arising from these events, but it is all that they are. He's worried about convincing Stephen that these are just coincidences, but says he cannot be responsible for these little coincidences that spring up. He is very emphatic that they will not pan out. Later, not long before his 2001 execution, McVeigh told the same story, except this time it was a one-armed man who helped them unstuck their vehicle. Keep in mind, Oliphant's one-armed. It's unknown to me how many unknown men lived near the hard-to-access Oliphant Ranch. Maybe one, maybe many. I don't know. A captain in the Kingman PD described Prescott Valley and Chino Valley as a possible hotbed of militia activity, mentioned Ty Hardin of Arizona Patriot fame specifically, and provided information and promotional literature for militia-type groups here. In late April and early May, 2 calls were made from Fortier's to Walter Bassett's in Prescott Valley, Arizona, the head of a small militia group in the area. Bassett told the FBI that McVeigh had contacted a friend of his in Chino Valley, Arizona, asking about white supremacy groups and had visited a gun store owner owned by another friend of his. Chuck asking about militia groups and how he, McVeigh, could start one. Chuck, who owned Longhorn Trading Company in Bullhead City, gave McVeigh Bassett's contact info. McVeigh then called Bassett, asking about militia groups in general and about the group Bassett led, the Yavapai, or is it I or an L? Yavapai Center for Action. Bassett gave McVeigh directions to his home, and McVeigh and Fortier came by not too long after, but Bassett told the FBI he couldn't remember what they talked about. Fortier did, though, and told the FBI that he'd gone with McVeigh to talk to Bassett, and the three had sat in Bassett's garage and discussed setting up a Patriot group. By the time he testified at Nichols State Trial in 2004, Bassett had recovered his memories. Here is a clipping. It says jurors at Terry Nichols State murder trial may hear closing arguments next week, then begin deliberations on a verdict. Defense attorneys are expected to finish presenting their evidence by Wednesday or Thursday. Prosecutors plan to put on 12 to 15 rebuttal witnesses. Judge Stephen Taylor asked the attorneys to turn in proposed jury instructions Thursday. We are ahead of schedule, Taylor told jurors Monday. Nichols, 49, faces 161 counts of first-degree murder, plus a count of first-degree arson and a count of conspiracy to commit arson. Jurors will hear more evidence during a punishment stage in which if they find Nichols guilty of first-degree murder, prosecutors took a death sentence. Jurors Monday heard from 6 defense witnesses. They included Walter Bassett, a write-in candidate for Arizona governor in 94. He met with bomber Timothy McVeigh in May 94. All right. Bassett was involved in the Arizona Constitutionalist political group known as the Yavapai Center for Action. He recalled Monday that McVeigh and Michael Fortier wanted to start a similar group in Kingman, Arizona. Okay. I walked him through it, Bassett said. He said McVeigh asked about banning blacks, Jews, Mexicans, or minorities. Bassett said he replied, anybody with an open mind should be welcome. Bassett also said McVeigh asked when we were supposed to react against the government. Bassett said he replied, you don't do anything until federal government officials actually break down doors and try to take your guns away. Okay. About 2 weeks after the Oklahoma City bombing, a producer for a major network called the FBI told him someone who sounded like an older man left a message on his answering machine telling him to Watch out for the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam was one of the structures targeted for destruction by the AP in the 1980s. The producer explained that he'd recently attended a Arizona Patriots rally in Prescott Valley led by a man named Walter Bassett. Rally attendees demanded that he show his ID and accused him of being an undercover FBI agent. The producer said he subsequently ran a story containing info about McVeigh's efforts to recruit Arizona Patriots and thought the answering machine message was likely left by an AP member as a warning. McVeigh said there was no significance to his and Fortier's meeting with Bassett. However, another much more significant call will be placed to Longhorn a few weeks after the Oklahoma City bombing, which we'll get to in the final thread of the series. On May 18th, 1994, McVeigh applied for a job at Loomis Armored Car in Bullhead, Arizona, and continued to make follow-up calls about this application. And then she provides a source backing that up. A major goal of the 1980s Arizona Patriots and other like-minded groups had been armored car robberies, a goal that the order had carried out, and a tactic featured in the Turner Diaries, a book written by the founder of the National Alliance that McVeigh was obsessed with. All right. A little over a week after the Oklahoma City bombing, PATCON handler Don Jarrett interviewed former Klansman and informant against the CSA, Walter Mac McCarty, who said that in May or June of 94, McVeigh, Fortier, and their UFO enthusiast friend Chris took his community gun safety class. All right. Mac told PATCON handler Don Jarrett that after the course, he met with McVeigh twice, but they just sat in the park in Mac's car and talked about guns and politics. Although if that's true, I'm not sure how this happened. And she in there, puts I believe this is from Aberration, and she has highlighted here. He even watched his young friend cry when they watched a video about Waco. So she's expressing about how that's not true, how that doesn't seem to line up with the statement there. So let's keep going. Mac said he did invite Fortier out to his other, more private property that summer, where they discussed the same thing. Mac agreed to try to get Fortier to engage in conversations with him, discover, among other things, whether Fortier knew the drifters, Lands, and Jacks. Mac told reporters that he thought McVeigh had been checking me out and attempting to determine his political views, and years later said he thought he was being felt out by McVeigh to see if he was worth recruiting to participate in an attack. A defense team investigator later told McVeigh that he'd spoken to Mac and showed him pictures he'd taken of Mac and his property. And here it shows this. This is a looks like some sort of excerpt from something. So I spoke about my meeting with Walter T. Mac McCarty and displayed several photographs I took of Mr. McCarty's property and of Mr. McCarty. Mr. McVeigh smiled a lot as he looked at the photographs and even raised his fist when he saw the photograph of the Confederate flag flying on a pole in front of Mr. McCarty's house. Mr. McVeigh spoke fondly of Mr. McCarty and that Mr. McCarty was a straight shooter. He was very frank and honest. Mr. McVeigh said seemed to be very taken by Mr. McCarty. Mr. McVeigh stated that he attended 2 gun classes given by Mr. McCarty with Michael Fortier. I presented Mr. McVeigh with the only existing list of the people who attended one of the gun classes. One of McVeigh's co-workers would also tell the FBI that in June 94, he saw McVeigh and 2 older men, about 55 to 60 years old, eating breakfast at the Silver Spoon restaurant in Kingman together. He wasn't the only one who saw McVeigh with an older man at the restaurant. And then this goes into Maryland. Okay, this is someone named Marilyn. Marilyn stated that she was very afraid what would happen to her if anyone found out that she was talking to someone about what she knew. I told Mr. McVeigh that Marilyn would not provide me with any more information, so I returned on the following date. The following date, Marilyn began to shake and cry as soon as she saw me, told me she received a phone call from someone named Ron who wanted to know what the 2 of us were talking about. Marilyn told me that Ron was inside the restaurant and was watching me at the time. I told Marilyn to go tell Ron that I was just a salesman who was hitting on her. Marilyn left, then returned to tell me that Ron did not believe that I was hitting on her. Marilyn looked very frightened, so I told her that I would return the following date, and also gave her my hotel telephone number so that she could call me at her convenience. Marilyn told me that she would be off on the following date and that we could possibly meet then. I told Mr. McVeigh that the following morning I contacted Marilyn at 8:40 a.m. and made arrangements to meet with her at the main post office located behind the motel where she's staying, 9 a.m. for breakfast. I told Mr. McVeigh that Marilyn did not show up and that I finally located her approximately 1 hour later at the Silver Spoon restaurant. I told Mr. McVeigh that Marilyn and I left and went to another restaurant where she told me that the person who drove the Ryder truck was a person by the name of Ron. Marilyn described Ron as ex-military who had been part of a 7-man militia group formed by the U.S. Army and trained to assassinate people in Vietnam. That totally checks out. I told Mr. McVeigh that Marilyn described Ron as being in his late 40s, 6'3", muscular build, salt and pepper curly hair, and at times wore glasses and a mustache. Ron supposedly lived in San Francisco in a drug-infested area near a park and lived on the second floor of an old building. I displayed the directions given to Ron's apartment. Mr. McVeigh stated that he has never been to California and that he does not know Ron or anyone else that fits this description given by Marilyn. Mr. McVeigh stated that he has met many militia members and that if he ever met Ron, he certainly couldn't remember. Mr. McVeigh stated that the only Ron that he knows is a friend by the name of Ron Cole and that Cole is approximately 75 years old. Mr. McVeigh again insisted that he was the one that drove the Ryder truck. Okay, so, all right, okay. Okay, well, where did we get an old man seeing him in the restaurant, though? I mean, I guess that would be an older man, because, I mean, he was in his 20s. Someone in his 40s, okay, is what the claim was there. Crap, I just lost my spot again. Give me a second. I really should bring the PDFs up, but whatever. All right, All right, give me a second. All right, here we are. We're back. Matt claimed they only hung out in a parked car and in the park though, and neither admitted to having breakfast with another older man. So who these men were is up for debate. I don't know what any of this means, if anything at all, but here are a few fun facts. On July 4th, 94, McVeigh flew from Arizona to WNY, I think Western New York, to visit his dying grandfather and flew back to an unknown location, after which he returned to Kingman. Not claiming it's related, but for some reason the only call placed from Elohim City to Buffalo seen thus far occurred on July 22nd, after McVeigh had returned to Kingman, when someone there for some reason called this guy. And then it shows detectives arrest suspect in December rape at gunpoint. Buffalo Sex Offense Squad detectives Wednesday arrested a South Buffalo man wanted in connection with a rape at gunpoint last month, authorities said. Michael Rotterman, 41 of Roanoke Parkway, allegedly raped a 19-year-old on December 23rd after he forced her into his white Ford Explorer near the 1100 block of South Park Avenue. Wow, this guy's a real winner. Sketch artist Ralph Siriani prepared a composite that was circulated among police by Detective Sergeant Thomas Vivian and Detective Jacqueline Sullivan. A break in the case came when South District Officer Jimmy Duffy spotted Rotterman driving a white sport utility vehicle, according to investigators. In executing a search warrant, police found a loaded semi-automatic handgun and other evidence in Rotterman's residence. He was charged with first-degree rape, 2 counts of second-degree sodomy, unlawful imprisonment, and criminal use of a firearm. So the implication, and when someone there so someone called this guy from Elohim City, placed from Elohim to Buffalo. Okay, so someone from Elohim City on that time called this person. Okay, all right. Well, that's something weird. Okay, and then they go more into, I guess, more of stuff that he did. Oh, geez. Okay, sex attacks on 4 women as well. Okay, so this guy really is a gigantic piece of shit. So just kind of the idea that, like, around the same time, someone's calling over to this place from Elohim. So what's going on here? I don't know. This is kind of disparate information, but maybe this will paint a picture further as we go along. All right, of course, I got to find my spot again. Awesome. All right, back. Or perhaps the call was for his father, who shared the same number and who, in just another string of coincidences, was found liable for over $7,000 to the Oliphant Financial Group in 2014. Someone at Elohim City would call directory assistance in Buffalo, although McVeigh was in Florida visiting his mother and paternal grandfather time. Was someone looking for him, thinking he was at his father's? Throughout McVeigh's time in Kingman that spring and summer, calls were placed from Elohim City to various numbers in Arizona, although right now the connection, if any, is unknown. Moving on. The previously mentioned Dane, who had lived at the Oliphant Ranch with her husband, and who told the FBI she thought he had foreknowledge of the bombing, also told the FBI that during the time she lived there, Jack had a wood-cutting business. Sometimes the visitors who showed up there would help him chop wood, which Jack would then take around to various locations to try to sell. Jack had dabbled in the tree-related business for quite some time. And then it goes into a link kind of going into that. Just kind of how we, Jack and Margaret Oliphant moved to Parks because Ranch Challenge Forest Products, later renamed Quickway Thinning Company, had a contract to thin trees in the Coconut National Forest. Contract was terminated August 9th because no progress is being made. Okay, so we're seeing some sort of contract they have here. We have all some sorts of problems with this contract. He said it's unbelievable. We have complaints that Oliphant hasn't paid his workers. He's been trying to get around the terms of the contract. He has tried to pay his workers by the acre instead of by the hour, which is against the rules of federal wage law. Charges in the file against Oliphant involving the thinning camp include aggravated assault, possession of illegal firearms, non-payment of wages, and bizarre allegations of tortures, beatings, and administering mind-altering drugs to employees so they could be controlled? Holy fucking shit. Okay, alrighty, okay. We're getting into fun territory. Alright, Hastings said Oliphant was picking up drunks, taking them out to the camp, and trying to get them to work it off. From what he heard, they were almost kidnapping people and bringing them out there. Oh my god, they were like it sounds like they're taking like homeless drunks and like we're intervening. We're helping you out. We're helping you get off the drugs. And then, then now you find them in a very impressionable stage. Okay, Ken Jacobs, who periodically inspected the thinning work for the Forest Service, called the camp unusual and very disorganized. So this was a government contract. Or maybe not government. Actually, I don't know if it's government. To be fair, I guess maybe I'm getting a hold of move to Parks. With the Coconut National Forest. So yes, this is I don't know if that'd be state or if that'd be federal, but yeah, that's some sort of national forest. This is some sort of government contract. So Jack Oliphant, this guy who glows like the sun, gets some sort of government contract for some sort of lumber, something or other. Also uses this as this contract as to be able to have some sort of weird camp. And all right, wow. It appeared he was hiring hitchhikers going across state on I-40 or would go over to Holbrook and pick up some Indians and put them to work. Okay, it's not too often that we have tree thinners camping out all winter in the snow. Their living conditions were very bare. I mean, people were living in 2 pieces of plywood propped up against one another. Also, it's pretty dirty. They have garbage scattered everywhere. 7 of Oliphant's workers have filed wage complaints with the U.S. Department of Labor. Labor officials refused to comment on the investigation, but Hastings estimated the claims total $10,000 to $12,000. Interestingly, a married couple reported that in July 1994, they'd seen an ad McVeigh had placed on a community bulletin board that said he was leaving the area by the end of the month and needed to sell the wood before then. On July 23rd, they went to his house in Golden Valley to pick up the wood, which they said consisted of scrapped lumber. He helped them load it into the car and head to Las Vegas, where he was the best man at Fortier's wedding. On August 1st, 1994, McVeigh moved out of the house he'd rented in Golden Valley, whose landlord, PATCON handler Don Jarrett, would later interview. He kept his box at the mailroom open, although on August 22nd, 1994, the drifters, with impeccable timing, Lands and Jacks, closed theirs. A man in Missouri who previously owned the mailroom in Kingman in the 1980s told the FBI in May 1995 that he remembered the Oliphants because they had rented a mailbox there during the time he owned it, and then told a strange story about another pair of drifters. Let's go ahead and read this. It was during the time he owned/operated the mailroom that 2 drifters from 2 different locations appeared at the mailroom. Bennett stated that they just showed up. He said he recalls that one of the drifters had the first name of Tim, last name unknown. Bennett never knew where this individual was from. The other drifter was from either Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. He never knew this person's name. Bennett advised that Tim resembled Timothy James McVeigh, and the other drifter resembled unknown subject number 2, unsub number 2, i.e. John Doe number 2. He advised that the individual who resembled unsub number 2 stuttered. Bennett subsequently tried to reach this individual or this person to read. Bennett did not rent a mailbox to either individual. Therefore, Bennett's business records from the mailroom, which are still in his possession, do not reflect the actual name of either of these drifters. Also, it was during the same period of time that Bennett was renting a mailbox at the mailroom to Margot Oliphant, the wife of Jack Oliphant. Jack was in prison at the time for conspiracy to blow up a dam in Arizona. Jack was/is the leader of the Arizona Patriots. Bennett stated that he recently saw Jack Oliphant being interviewed on television as part of the news media coverage involving the Oklahoma City bombing. Therefore, he believes Jack is no longer in prison. Bennett mentioned the fact that when he saw the interview on television, this triggered his mind in reference to the information he is furnishing at this time, some of which he previously furnished the FBI at the time he called the FBI's 1-800 toll-free number. At this time, Margot resided in a mobile home in the hills east of Kingman, where the Arizona Patriots train. Bennett subsequently introduced these two drifters to Margot, who allowed both individuals to live in a tent together on so-called Patriots property. Okay, so now we're getting to this individual look like McVeigh and this other individual look like John Doe 2, supposedly staying over here. Bennett advised that both of the drifters had a white separatist mindset, which he opposes. Bennett severed his relations with these two individuals because of this reason. He tried to convert their thinking by taking them to Calvary Chapel in Kingman. However, this met with negative results. Bennett recalls that Tim was a Buddhist when he first met him. However, Tim ended up burning his Buddhist beads. The last time Bennett saw either individual was in Kingman in 1988. Okay. In August 94, the same month, McVeigh left Kingman again, and the more recent drifters, Lands and Jack, closed their mailbox. The mailroom box used by alien implant Guy Colburn, but registered to a guy named Webb, also closed for lack of payment. However, Colburn would continue using as a return address until at least late December, using his alias Bill Carson. The other box there, under the name Zoe, remained open until the day after Colburn's arrest. Not saying any of that means anything, but seriously, what the fuck? Early 1995, whereupon things started to get weird, and we'll get back to the National Alliance /West Coast /Aryan Nation related plotline, which I digress from here. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, that's the end of this thread. Actually, we got through this a little bit quicker than I thought, but I still think we did a good job about kind of picking and choosing which ones we went through, because not all of these, I think, merited to go through. Maybe there were some that I didn't, but if you do want a thorough read through, I would recommend going through it on your own. It always is helpful to go, to devour this sort of information through multiple methods, be it reading, listening, visual. This is part of why I like to do these sort of things. They allow this to really stick in my old noggin that much better. But with that, I guess we're going to go ahead and get out of here. There will be another one of these soon for sure. If you want to support what I'm doing over here, over at No Way Jose, you can leave a like. Oh, geez, I just realized this popped over here. I had a goofy hair popping up that whole time, so I look nuts. But if you do want to support what I'm doing over here, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment. You can leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. Those sort of things go a long way. Hell, you can even follow me on Twitter at @TowerKingJose. These are all things you can do without chipping in the tiniest bit of money whatsoever, without having to do anything, completely free. And those are all things that will help this show go a long way without costing you a dime. So, but if you do want to directly support the show in the best way you possibly really can, then the best way to do that is patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. The lowest level is $2. That's where you get access to early episodes. Much like the one you're seeing right here. Like this would have, if you were a patron, you would have got this weeks ahead of everybody else. I've been doing 1 to 2 episodes a week behind the paywall these days, keeping it roughly about 4 or so behind the paywall at any given time. So you're getting weeks of paywall content. You also, the $2 level, you're also getting ad-free RSS feeds, and also you're getting priority on me and Austin's weekly call-in show, which is already dead, which is on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And the highest levels of my sponsors, I read them off every episode. as a big thank you to those out there that support the show. At my co-host in Tarragang, at Tarragang Toad, also at Abrogate D's, at ZOVRECK, at _ Zeal, Tim Tuttle, at Jolly Klebold. I guess technically actually isn't, but hey, almost just kind of want to read it, just kind of because it's like just to keep him alive in here. At this point, I will probably have already. I actually surprisingly haven't announced that situation with Jolly on yet. I know this will be weird because he's a paywall content. That'll be something done on the live show. So, for the purpose of the people watching this publicly, it'll already be announced. But yeah, that's some stuff to be said there, and you'll already have known it. This one, if you're watching this, comes out public. But Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine, big fan of the show, Torme, and then also Jordan Pearson. That's patreon.com, so it's No Way Jose 2020. With that, guys, we're going to get out of here. Appreciate you all for joining us, and I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.